everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Mayor Tyler Moore Show here on the Kokomo Post. My name is Drew Larison. This is MTM. Mr. Mayor, how are you?
I'm great. I'm Christmassy.
You better be, because
I am Christmassy.
This was a crazy Christmassy weekend here in Kokomo.
In Kokomo, from start to finish. I mean, as soon as the sun started to work its way down on Friday and worked right into the shop and stroll first Friday that night, and then the reindeer run with the Kokomo Library, and then the parade that night. We care all weekend.
It was
Holy
nuts.
cow.
So much Christmas.
So much Christmas. If you are not in the spirit now, then you just are not trying.
Yeah, it was the parade. We care. Aaron and I went down to Indy. I've said it before. I'm a giant Michigan football fan.
Blue.
We won the Big Ten championship. Aaron and I were there. Mm-hmm. It was great. But Indy was decked out all Christmassy and holiday. Yeah, it was very Christmas weekend. So I did apologize when you walked into the office. I did miss the Christmas parade because we were down at the game, so I apologize.
But
I saw the pictures. It looked crazy.
As much as Father Christmas as you are, you're even a bigger Michigan fan, and so you were really where you needed to be Saturday.
Yeah.
To
waited a decade to be able to go to that game. A decade.
And did it right, man. You got spoiled and all kinds of.
It was so
great
fun.
Stuff, so
it was a great. It was fun to watch. We had a really good time. We were surrounded by good people. I will say, been to a lot of Michigan football games in my day. Purdue, IU, different places, Northwestern, and there are no nicer fans than the fans of the Iowa Hawkeyes. They were the most polite, friendly, fun opponent fans I've ever been around. I'll be honest, IU has had some awful fans down in the Memorial.
Sure.
I've heard some very crazy things come out of their mouths. But I mean, like the Iowa fans, they're just classic good Midwest people. That's really what it was. They just kept saying like, hey, we're just happy to be here. Yep. And like, if I kept thinking, if I were them and I was getting beat like 35-3, I would not be happy.
Be obnoxious. That's right.
So they were getting killed, and they were still very great people to be around. Good. So that was our weekend. We spent some time in Indy on Sunday.
Second most pleasant people, from my experience, as you know, as many others know, I was a Notre Dame cheerleader.
Yeah.
We played Tennessee at Tennessee. My
Rocky Top.
My junior year or senior year, I forget. So yeah, Rocky Top. I mean, god awful orange. But I tell you what, I mean, we went down the night before, had a pep rally, and then the alumni down there took us to this rib place that was like one of the most popular rib places close to campus. And of course we had to go straight from the pep rally. So the Notre Dame cheerleaders walk into this Tennessee volunteer rib joint, and we thought, what in the world are they doing to us? Just like Iowa fans. I mean, they were the most hospitable.
Southern hospitality.
Exactly. They were so pleasant, and I mean, from start to finish. So yes, true Southern hospitality from the Tennessee Volunteers. Kudos to them.
There's just nothing. And this season, obviously, I've had a lot of fun because we've obviously had a great season, and I've definitely had seasons where it wasn't a lot of fun. But like, there's really nothing like college football to me.
Right.
Like, it really does
totally agree.
Bring out some sort of atmosphere that you just don't find in anything else. It's so fun. You're happy for these kids that are giving it their all in the game, and you see a guy like Jim Harbaugh on the brink of being fired last year after 2-4, turns it around to be Big Ten champs. Like, there's nothing like college football. I am full of terror and excitement as we go into the playoffs now. But yeah, I am bummed that I missed the first, not the first, but the first in a really long time, the City of Kokomo Christmas Parade. But I did see pictures. You were decked out in your Christmas suit.
Absolutely.
I love that. The First Lady was there.
Yes.
Handing out holiday cheer as well.
Holiday cheer, keeping me in line.
What's one of some of like the big highlights for you that you remember back?
Like the paper report. Oh, from years back? Or
no, just this year.
Oh, this year. Yeah. The band. I mean, every high school registered their band, but then collectively the directors came together and said, let's do and that's what they call themselves, the all Howard County Mass.
Love that.
Yeah, Howard County Mass Band. Every single one of those kids were decked out in Christmas attire. There wasn't a tiger section and comet section walk. It was just all of them together.
They put on a show.
Even the color guards, they were all Christmassy and everything, and they came through there. And like I had mentioned in the paper, that's what Christmas is all about. Just breaking down barriers, breaking down walls, coming together as one. I mean, and it was just from start to finish, just a great time. I mean, kudos to everybody that did it. I mean, they went all out. I think we had probably 8 Grinches, 6 Santa Claus.
You were more Grinch than Santa?
There were more Grinches than Santa Claus.
Jeez.
So, love the fact that not only the people that were in the parade went all out, but the people that came to enjoy the parade got all decked out. Buddy the Elf even showed up.
Love that.
During the snowball fight, so it was perfect.
Love that. Yeah, I know Bree, who obviously works here at the Kokomo Post, but she's also the MC and the voice of the Bobcats. She was there.
That's right.
With the Bobcats, so that was cool to see.
Sitting top of their Bobcat Jeep. She was all at her.
No, that's really exciting. And the pictures looked awesome. The pictures from the city, Mike took some beautiful photos. You guys can find them, guessing, on the city's
kudos
Facebook
to
page.
my folks, my brother, my sister, Dave Trine, Tom Tolan, Susan Alexander.
Put on a party.
Mark McQuarrie, and the city street and traffic guys.
Yeah.
Pulled it off.
Well done. Well done. Hopefully that'll keep going.
You bet it will.
Obviously, as long as you're mayor, but then the future decades and generations of Kokomo. Let's keep it going. So that's awesome. So tell us, I mean, after this parade, obviously that was the big thing last week, probably going on in City Hall. What's going on in City Hall this week? Anything special?
Gearing up for end of year things. So looking at department budgets, seeing where things need to be moved and appropriated so that line items are covered. Because the last thing you want as a municipality is to end your fiscal year in the red in one of the items. And so working with the council to get those all straightened out and at the same time kind of judge Mother Nature, Farmer's Almanac, whatever they all look to see when the leaves will all be down, the snow will start falling, and and just looking at end of year fun.
We've had an oddly warm beginning of December. I think we had like 2 or 3 50-degree days last week.
Yes.
Yeah, so that probably does make it pretty darn hard to predict what's the street. When do we get ready for snow? When are we doing all that kind of stuff? So I want to talk about some pretty large news happened it broke, I guess, last Monday. One of Kokomo's longtime standing newspapers, the Kokomo Perspective, has decided to close their doors.
That came as a shock. I mean, to a lot of people.
I think literally everyone.
Staff too, but yeah, I mean, they had been around since 1989, so 32 years.
It's the year I was born.
It's the year I graduated from high school.
Awkward.
So
32 years.
I think I just felt 3 more hairs on my head turn gray with that realization. But
I'm an old soul. I get it. Yeah.
But no, I mean, they've done, a great job. Some may not agree with that, but they've done a great job covering the news and not holding back in a lot of things to keep folks transparent and such. And and I think folks always enjoyed the cartoons and caricatures in there. I always saw it as somewhat of a badge of honor, to be
You're right. I never got to be in one of those. That's kind of sad that you say that. Yeah.
But no, I mean, just, you're right. It was kind of sad. I mean, you hate to see any business, go out, but one that's had a long-standing history in Kokomo for that many years, was a little saddening and surprising. So hopefully the staff works their way around and somebody else comes to the plate to provide another second news outlet besides the Kokomo Tribune, either in print or online. Paper-wise, but you guys are obviously filling that void more than adequately with everything that you do.
Sure, and I mean, to be clear, we've said this before so many times. We're not a news organization,
right?
I mean, we're not. We don't have a staff full of trained, whether it's college or professionally trained journalists. But yes, obviously we talk about information going on in Kokomo, but I think we're not a news organization. Yeah.
But Okay, so we'll throw quotes around news because you guys, I'm not saying this just because we're sitting here and you're within arm reach of me, but you guys are like the true news outlet that people appreciate because you report the community. I mean, things going on in the community. That's what people like to see in the news. I mean, the good stuff, the challenging stuff. I mean, we go through questions here and stuff. I mean, the transparency is there as well, but you guys report the news or the happenings, in the community the way people really, I guess, hope media would be.
What we mean by that, I mean, we really feel like we fit into this category of infotainment. And I swear I did not have this on my list to talk about us. That's not what my goal of this topic was. But I mean, what those journalists did at the Perspective, it's going back to what you're talking about. It's transparency in corporation. It's transparency in government. The big word that I always think about when it comes to true journalistic effort is just accountability. Like having people in a media company locally keeping government, keeping organizations, keeping corporations accountable for what they're doing. And honestly, I've been really sad the last week that Kokomo is losing a layer of that, losing a level of that. And, we are stuck. We're not stuck. That was a bad choice. We are now with only one organization. Tribune, I didn't mean it like that. We are now with only one organization left being that layer of accountability. And, Kokomo is a town full of large corporations. Kokomo is a town full of government organizations and all those different church organizations that we've got one staff left in Kokomo doing their best to keep those things accountable. And that's extremely important to a society, is to have that layer of accountability, whether that is a news organization or just accountability in general as a culture, as a society, is just really important. So, I mean, we were very sad to hear that news. And I guess I'll say this too. There's been some rumors that we are in the process of buying the Perspective here at the Kokomo Post, or even having a conversation of replacing them. And I mean, I'll say it. No, there have been no conversations with us or the people of the Kokomo Perspective in that sort of conversation at all.
There you go, folks.
I don't even know if it is buyable or anything like that, but no, that conversation has not happened. It's still so fresh to the staff of the Kokomo Perspective that like the last thing we wanted to be last week was someone talking about it publicly or even putting something out there that would hint towards that's what we're doing. There were real people with real jobs and a real passion for Kokomo on the staff of that company, and we wanted to be as sensitive and as empathetic towards those people as possible, because they really were doing fantastic work in the world of news and media for Kokomo. So we were shocked last week. I think is honestly, and they were too, is what it sounds like. So, I mean, all of our thoughts go to that staff. We hope you guys will more than land on your feet, because you're a talented group of people that will. We really believe that. And thank you basically for all the work you have done in Kokomo and Howard County and the surrounding areas, whether that's in sports coverage, local features where you told the stories of people of Kokomo in such a beautiful way, or maybe it was in that area where you kept businesses, organizations, government, kept them accountable for their actions towards the people of this community. Thank you so much for all that you've done. And I'm pretty darn confident you're not done. I think you're going to keep doing this, whether that's in this community or other communities in the world or in our country or our state. You guys are too talented to move on to something else. So, that's that. There we go. Next thing, speaking of, stories happening in our community. And I wanted to talk about a Tribune story that came out last week about some overtime pay discussions with like the fire department, because a lot of people are confused by it. It's a giant dollar amount mentioned in the story. But basically, city council, the fire department came to city council requesting $590,990 in overtime fees to be paid to the fire department for 2021, basically. It passed with an 8-1 vote. Councilman Miklick was the only one that said no. Just for reference, which I thought this was important too, in 2019, the request for overtime was $545,000 and change. In 2020, 2020, it was $786,000 in
what
overtime.
they actually spent. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So obviously that's a large number of overtime. And Chief Frazier has been quoted saying that it is due to understaffing. Specifically, I think an example he gave this year was a lot of fire department members, they're getting different medical surgeries or their medical leaves in 21 because they couldn't get them in 2020. So they're missing a lot of work there. The big question is money that we're transferring over from the budget is coming from the police budget.
A large portion. Not that whole amount. So of the 500 and change, 590 and change, almost half of that is coming from within the fire department budget. So Chief Frazier, from what he was given budget-wise, has
so there's budget for overtime.
So the line item, there was a budget for overtime. However, that was not adequate. So moving dollars from within his own budget, whether it was from equipment or other things, so almost 300,000. Came, or almost 200,000 or so, came from within his own budget, and then looking through the availability of funds from the department, the police department had worked efficiently enough and had a large chunk. I mean, it wasn't everything that they had left. It was something that was identified. Conversations were had with Chief Stout to see if that was something manageable. Again, being a team player, willingly allowed the city to use those funds to help offset the additional shortage in the fire department's budget to, as I mentioned earlier, make sure that any of the line items, any of the departments did not end the year in the red, which not just so that the city didn't have a black eye with that, but it affects the city's bond rating. I mean, so if we're looking at projects, which we are, got a few substantially or rather large projects in the queue. I mean, if there's going to be bond issuance, we want to make sure that the city remains strong bond-wise. Having any negative comments and such on the audit affects federal funding as well. When we look at our streets and roads and and housing projects, I mean, we talked about Jenny Jordan and her development department that there's HUD funds that are used for redevelopment or upgrades to those residents in the community as well. So there's a whole gamut of things that are affected by a negative audit, and so that was the reason, and that Chief Stout graciously, being a team player, said, "Yep, here we can do it." And that's not too uncommon for departments in the past to have, again, end up at the end of the year working under budget. It was just unfortunate that the fire department, as you mentioned, surgeries, actually COVID. I mean, there was a handful.
Yeah, that was mentioned in the article
and
too.
So even though the staffing levels are what they were back in 17 and 18, as he starts working his way back up, things were different. I think in 2018, the overtime budget was right around $250,000, and so I think that's where the council had looked at that and said, okay, well, staffing levels are here, they should be able to cover overtime. Well, when you throw in, and not necessarily a short workforce, but an aging workforce that has surgeries and injuries, then COVID sets in, and then
it's a perfect storm
the loss of one of the firefighters and such. It was just one thing, and then the chief's emphasis on getting the department trained on EMS and hazmat and such that they had neglected in years past, used overtime to cover a lot of that they were doing during the day, and that. So it was just a series, and as some may say, of unfortunate events that led up to where they were. But again, with folks being team players, we're able to cover that. So yes, there's concerns from some of the council as well as administration, on the management of overtime and how that comes into play. Hiring is going to continue. They'll work toward that. We're having a study done on the fire department to look at efficiencies that could be realized, and maybe set out a game plan and such to move forward. Because not only are there's challenges with staffing, but there's challenging with equipment. We've got aging fire trucks, and those are $600,000 to $800,000, which a lot
could have
more
been paid for by this overtime.
Charges, charges for the police department and such. So, although there appears to be some similarities between the two, there are great differences, in how those are handled. So, we're working on it moving forward to make sure that it doesn't happen or that is minimized moving forward. Yeah,
it's interesting. I remember it seemed like months of episodes when I asked you what's going on in City Hall, you said budgets. Mm-hmm. And I feel like this is the one example of this is why we work so hard on budgets. Because, it's obviously just a lot of money to manage and to make sure it goes in the right situations. But there's a lot of things that pop up, that's maybe you don't think of. But one of the biggest questions, I guess, from City Council in that Kokomo Tribune article mentioned that it kind of comes out of the middle of nowhere at the end of the year, and they're not bullied into signing it, but at the same time, we kind of have to. So I forget who it was. I think it was Councilwoman McKibben. She said it'd be nice maybe throughout the year we get updates on here's where we're at on overtime. All right, here 2 months later, here's where we're at on overtime, instead of just at the end of the year, hey, we need $600,000. So that was one of the pushbacks from the city council as well. But explain to us.
Well, and there was reference made to, believe Councilman Acord said, hey, we discussed this back, because actually during budget sessions, once they were done with that, they then had a follow-up conversation with Chief saying, hey, this is where overtime is headed, and what, how are we going to address this or whatever. So the discussion began back in August. And, and unfortunately, because outside of the council meetings, the entire council can't meet due to open door laws. But there were a few that did. So there was a little bit of conversation, a little bit of monitoring leading up to it. And I think Councilman Acord said, see, we knew this was going to happen. And that's when Councilman Collins said, well, yeah, we talked about it. He didn't say it was going to happen. We said it could happen. And so, so what they were wanting, I think, answers from Chief Frazier on was, okay, we knew there was possibly a problem, and okay, fine, it could have happened, but why? What wasn't done? What could have been done to avoid it from being done? That extent. And so, which is
another question I have, and I understand you're not the fire chief, but how does I understand, but how does this happen? I know that people get sick, people have surgeries, they have to be out. Is there a certain quota inside each firehouse that this many people have to be here in case there is a call? Or
3 firefighters per engine. Ideally they would like 4, but again, with staffing challenges, they don't have 4 per engine, typically 3. And so with guys out, and it's not an 8-hour shift if they're out. If somebody's
it's like a 24 hour.
It's a 24 hour. So again, if council or folks are looking, okay, well, why did police not have to spend as much as fire? Well, if you've got a police officer out off of his shift, for one day, that's an 8-hour shift. You got somebody you're paying time and a half for 8 hours. If you've got a firefighter out, that's 24 hours. That's 24 hours of time and a half. Yeah. So pennies add up. So I guess that's where some of the challenges lie as well.
Another question I had, and I saw this in a few comments online too, over the past, I guess through your administration and even the campaign leading up, the conversation of police budget was a large conversation. We should have more budget for our police. We need to be hiring more police. We need more police on the streets. And then at the end of the year, we have this conversation. We do increase police budgets and all of that. But at the end of the year, the police budget is able to give hundreds of thousands of dollars over to the fire department. So where is that police budget? Is maybe the police over budgeted to where we're at now, where they're able to give and transfer that much money over? Or is that money due to we would like to have hired more cops, and that's what that would have paid for? But we just haven't hired that many.
And I forget where, those dollars actually came. It might have come from the police's overtime budget. And I apologize that I didn't,
No, that's,
but same thing. It could be, next year could be a total flip-flop. We could have an aging police department where they have incidents where there's a handful of injuries, handful of surgeries, an outbreak of COVID, and those guys are out, and fire remains, safer and such. And So, but you're right. That goes to back to the budgeting or forecasting aspect of it.
It's so much more than dollars. I mean, the variables you're talking about, looking at the age of the staff, looking at, equipment and all of that. It's so much more than just, well, this is how much they spent last year, so they probably need this much. There's a lot of variables into that.
And the concern from police as well as a few of the councilmen is that the council members don't look at this and say, oh, well, police ended, with over $400,000 available in their budget. So next year's budget session, well, they didn't need that much, and so they cut it there. Yeah. So I think there's been that assurance to Chief Stout that, hey, we're not going to penalize you. And I think that was Micklick's, I guess, position, is that he didn't want to, to support something that in his mind was penalizing Chief Stout for working within his budget and having that, where again, it could very easily have been
so many variables
between department, even the street department. We could have had, a huge COVID outbreak and guys down, and they might have been over budget and overtime, or we could have had 2 straight weeks of snow and by the end of the year, and could have eaten up the overtime budget that the street department had. We could be doing the same shuffle from police to street.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a classic, like, you don't know what you don't know, right? You don't know what the future, I mean, obviously no one knew COVID was coming. And even when you know COVID is coming, you can't really predict how many people in the fire department are going to get COVID, or, how many people need, I don't know, a gallbladder removable surgery. I mean, there's so many moving variables that would affect that. It is impossible to predict it perfectly.
Yes.
But yeah, it was interesting. A lot of people were asking questions about that. I think it is because to the average person, which I understand the city budget in general is massive, but seeing a almost $600,000 request for transfer of funds, that's a lot of money. So it brought up just a lot of questions on the why, the how, the what are we doing to fix it to maybe not have it next year. So it was interesting.
And those on the other side of that argument said, okay, just as you mentioned, the overtime budget for 2020 was $748,000, yet obviously it wasn't at the end of the year when they budgeted for 21 to begin with, but then the budget was set at it was reduced to, I think, $200,000 or $300,000 when
that's a large difference.
By budget time they were already staring $400,000
$500,000
in the face. And so I don't know.
Yeah,
it's part of the discussion.
Freaking budgets, man. Which is why, like I was saying, when you're describing all this, it just makes me like, when you answered that question, still working on budgets. The uneducated person to me of like how cities work, I'm like, we're in a lot of time on budgets. It seems like a lot of time, but it makes sense. There's so many moving parts. There's so many variables to running a city, and things come up, and you got to try to plan as best as possible for those things that come up. Awesome. So let's get into the Ask the Mayor segment, partnered with Lexi's Drink Barn. We have some really in-depth questions that I'm really proud of the people that asked some questions. We've got some good ones. We've got some fun ones. But shout out to Lexi's Drink Barn for sponsoring this segment. If you guys want a fountain Coke, if you're craving something bubbly, swing by Lexi's. I know our office, we got a full office order of Lexi's Drink Barn today. My go-to is the 44-ounce Coke Zero with sugar-free vanilla, because I'm healthy. Trying to be healthy.
Good for you.
Drinking soda pop, sody pop, as some older folks call it. I love that. Give me a sody pop. But Lexi's Drink Bar, huge fan of the show, huge friend of the show. Thank you much for partnering this Ask the Mayor something. Let's get into it. Let's start off with a fun one.
Okay.
And Roger on Facebook is always providing the fun ones. Listen to this. He says, I'm impressed by his visual map of Kokomo in his head. So I picked a random city park for him to identify. Can he figure out what park is at the corner of J Street and Spraker Street? Which I just realized I myself did not look this up. You could say any park in the world and I'd believe you. Please look this up. What park is on the corner of J Street and Spraker Street?
J and Spraker.
Roger on Facebook.
Jay and Spraker is
Have we stumped him?
You've stumped me.
Are you looking it up? Do you know what it is? There's so many parks in Kokomo.
Yeah. So if he identified it, it must have a name, because a lot of the little pocket parks don't necessarily
have names.
But I'm sure Jay and Spraker does. I know it's close to Studebaker, but it's not.
So it's. Let me see. Yeah, I'm still looking too. You want to stump all of us.
I know, right? We'll get back to you.
You know what it is?
Riley Park.
Do you know that one?
I did not know that one. But you know.
Oh,
there you go. I was going to say I would
we
have
learned
Tom
something.
Toland.
If you guys can't hear that on the mics, it is Riley Park because it used to be Riley Elementary School. That's interesting. I've never even heard of Riley Elementary School.
Yeah, because it's no longer there.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
but that's awesome that they
playground, basketball court, and what?
And parking.
There's parking. What a park! What else would you need at a park?
Yeah,
other than parking. Yeah.
Riley Park. All right.
Yeah. Well done, Roger. You have officially stumped the mayor. And honestly, Roger, I think you may have just came up with a new segment for this show. Ooh. Come up with like a really deep Kokomo history question and see if we can stop. Because you are a history buff. Like, you love Kokomo history. You talk a lot about how deep your family history here in Howard County is.
That'll be fun.
You talk the talk. Let's walk the walk. We might start that new segment. That would be fascinating. I think I have an idea for a partner. Okay. Joshua on Facebook. He says, I grow tired of telling visitor friends and family that they cannot eat what they catch while fishing in the Wildcat. What is being done to reverse the damage done to our natural bodies of water by legacy manufacturing companies such as the old steel mill? Joshua on Facebook. Great question.
Well, the old steel mill site, which is right across from the wastewater plant, I mean, that area has been remediated, but as we unfortunately found out as we were doing the next phase of the long-term control plan for our wastewater storm and sanitation sewers, is that there does still have contamination existed. I mean, there's our stormwater district, which is not necessarily a joint office, so to speak. There's a city stormwater district and a county stormwater district that's set up, and Don Cree is that. And so, as part of that monitoring, works with the county to take water samples and such from the inlets. So water that works its way down to the creek, those that are known and those that are marked, annual samples are taken from those to monitor it, to see. And so there is that ongoing work done by both city and county to work not only the water from inlets but also from the regulated drains that are under the city's authority. But there is ongoing monitoring. Now, why they shouldn't necessarily eat what's pulled out of the Wildcat, I think is just mainly because of the unknown. I mean, there's
it's the three-eyed fish that pop out of the creek too. So I mean, there's monitoring, but is there any? And I don't even know if it's, I guess, possible. But like, is there actual work possibly can be done to actually make it to where you could eat the fish that you catch out of
there? And a lot of that would be partnering with the DNR now with the amount of inlets or water that comes from various areas along the creek, from groundwater and such. I guess a lot of that could be just more monitoring or regulation along the banks where those inlets may be.
Is the concern that the steel mill is still putting things I think there's still putting contaminations in that water, or is it just it's there from years ago?
It's from years ago. So it's what had worked its way down along the banks. I mean, there's probably there could very well be things in the ground that could be leaching out, but once that is identified, again, with these random samples that are taken, by both stormwater districts, then if it's identified and can be remediated. So, I mean, I guess it's one of those things that, as extensive as the water system or the waterways are that work through the city and everything that feeds into it, it's unfortunately probably more reactive than proactive in areas unless something's identified.
Is that something? I know, I know there's a company called Sediment Removal Services, and I know they can come in and kind of remove the dirt from the bottom of like a lake or a pond or something like that. Is that the type of service that would need to get done to potentially react that?
Anything in the natural waterway goes through the DNR. So the DNR,
and that's a federal or a state
yes,
program?
Federal.
It's federal.
So if there was any dredging to be done or specific action to be taken, it would be something in partnership with the DNR. So if something's identified in one of the natural waterways. Now, if it's something, like I said, if it's working its way from off the bank into the waterway, that's something that the city or county could regulate and could do. So a lot of those retention ponds, detention ponds and such in subdivisions and such that would work its way. Yes, companies like that could be hired to address any type of contamination there. One thing that also is an issue that a lot of people don't realize, and actually I hadn't until just a few years ago, is that at the end of the summer, when people are emptying their pools to winterize them, if they've still been using it and have high levels of chlorine that work their way into the storm sewers for the city and works its way into the waterways, that's where you end up getting some fish kills, because the level of chlorine that works its way from those drains into the natural waterways affects the wildlife too. And so
the safest way is just into like a grass area and something like that.
Yep, into a grass area, or let your
either kill your grass or potentially kill the fish.
Stay out of the pool. Let the pool kind of naturally work the chlorine
get out naturally, and then dump it. Oh, that makes sense. So let's talk about like some positive things. Where are some places that people could fish? I mean, in Howard County and Kokomo, where you could actually eat, I guess, what you're catching.
So you're playing a Roger and you're going to stump me?
I don't know. I'm trying to spin this. I mean, he says he has like friends and family come visit. There's got to be some areas where you're capable
I will commit.
This is the segment where we get Tori on the show.
We'll get Tori. I'll even talk to Don Cree, because Don Cree would know probably more than Tori would, because he's our stormwater director, and find out where
people fish here.
So I will find out and report back next week.
Sounds good. Great question, Josh.
Great
Thank
places
you.
to fish.
Next question is from Anonymous. I own a business on Lincoln Road that has had orange barrels and orange cones out front since the start of June. Just last Monday, my exit approach was demolished and closed off. Do I have a reasonable hope that I will have my exit open and serviceable before winter weather sits in? My sales have dropped by more than 25% each month this summer and fall. I've had folks tell me that they avoid the entire area due to street closures and construction projects. This, of course, anecdotal information, but my sales receipts are a matter of record. I feel that our area of the city that was brutalized during the duration of the sidewalk and curb project. Do we have any recourse for lost income?
Any recourse, I suppose, if it's
a lot of questions
like anything else. So obviously there was a major sidewalk installation project around Indiana University Kokomo, around the campus, that then migrated south again to make that whole area a little more walkable for the students and folks. Then we got a couple trolley stops as well, and so either fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of that concrete work was being contracted out by E&B Paving, and they're one of the biggest suppliers and contractors that do street, road, sidewalk, curb work for the city and county. And so a lot of it was weather dependent. Some of it had to do with utilities being relocated, and so a lot of what the work began had to halt as they worked through those logistics as well. And so we apologize for that. Like anything else, whether it's damage to a vehicle, home due to a trash truck, accident. Same way here, loss of business. They could probably file a tort claim with the city, and we would turn that over to the insurance company, and the insurance company would make a determination as to whether or not it would be a viable claim. But I mean, if it's like you said, if he's got it, he or she has it documented and has a specific dollar amount and can support that, again, like any other damage or loss, they could consider filing a tort claim, and we would turn it into the city's insurance and see if it would be a viable claim. So, but going back to the one question that was in there, yes, it'll be open before the winter months hit, because we have the commitment from E&B that, again, now that even though asphalt's done, concrete can still be poured and done. And so all those businesses should be able to have accessibility before the snow gets or weather gets too crazy.
I guess, yeah. Gotcha. Next question is from Josh on Facebook. Not a request for a specific sidewalk, but I'm curious if there have been any studies done on pedestrian traffic in this city. I expect downtown and near grocery stores to have a high foot traffic, but I'm curious if sidewalk placement is more by request versus actual studies.
Actual studies and reports. So the studies and reports are done end up being a result of requests or concerns or even the potential for safety. And so part of that is worked into the plan that we have for the streets and sidewalks and areas. But as with even resurfacing, reconstruction of the streets and such, the installation of sidewalks still are a part of a plan. Some of it may even need to gain accessibility, having easements along, because again, if the sidewalks aren't there, we need permission from the landowners if there's not already a dedicated easement for the city in there. So a lot of times, even though sidewalks are being requested and the plan or desire would be part of that, the struggle of gaining or being granted accessibility from the property owners, if there's not already dedicated easement there, a lot of times puts projects on hold or even halts that. So requests start at part of the plan as well, but if we don't already have permission or the legal ability to do improvements in there by way of an already filed or recorded easement, then we need permission from the landowners to do it. And even though these 4 owners or property owners would like a sidewalk and these other 6 don't, we can't hodgepodge without having that in.
Makes sense.
So
Michael on Instagram, any plans for increasing the city's EV charging capabilities?
Yes.
Also, hold on.
Okay, sorry.
Jeez. Also, any plans to add any EVs to the city's fleet of vehicles? Interesting question, Michael on Instagram. A lot of EV conversations, I guess.
It's the buzzword of the time. I mean, obviously with Stellantis's, the whole auto industry talking about electric vehicles and such, and Stellantis's investment here locally in that. Yes,
also EV is electric vehicle.
Yeah.
If you didn't know that. Yeah.
So looking at the installation of additional charging areas, yes. Again, if it's not a property that is owned by the city, we would need permission from the property owner in order to install those.
Yeah. I know there's been a rumor for a long time. The Meyer parking lot, I've heard for a while, is going to get like a Tesla supercharger station or some sort of, I don't know, you call them like a bank of chargers or something like that, because it's right off 931, very accessible for people. I've heard that rumor for a long time. I don't know if it's true.
So you would also think that maybe some of the restaurants like Sonic or Barker's B&K, you have the drive up, put those charging stations there, and man, you can sit and eat.
Well, the ones I've seen a lot, they're in mall areas. Mm-hmm, right. Mall areas that do have restaurants. I mean, honestly, Markland Mall would be a great example, because you have Prodigy, you have Chili's there, you have Panda, because the goal is charge your car while maybe you go shopping, or maybe you charge your car while you grab a bite to eat at a restaurant, and it's just honestly, it's like an economic development play. It really brings people in for that reason. Right. So no specific plans, but
yes. So the need or seeing the need for additional charging stations is on our radar. As for adding EVs to the fleet of vehicles,
when are we going to get our first Tesla cop car?
That's probably inevitable. So
those things, I mean, sorry, people trying to outrun the police, but if the city of Kokomo gets a Tesla Model S, you ain't winning that race. Those things are very fast. So I know I've seen that in some areas where even public transportation are, becoming EV or even
trolleys and
city,
buses.
Trolleys and buses or city
utility
or city vans. Yeah. Utility vehicles and stuff like that. People are moving more in that direction. I think President Biden said his goal is all federal vehicles within a certain year, obviously span, but maybe not all, or a high majority are electric vehicles by a certain time. So that'd be really interesting too. And honestly, being someone from Kokomo, I'm all about it because Stellantis is making these investments, and a lot of that is going to start here in Kokomo.
Yeah, because then a lot of people say, okay, well, then where will all this power come from to charge everything?
I mean, they don't ask that about the gas, that's for sure. But awesome. So that was the Ask the Mayor segment here on the Kokomo Post, partner with Lexi's Drink Barn. We really appreciate all your questions. You sending them in, asking great questions this week. We're getting deep.
I like it.
We're getting deep here on the Mayor Tyler Moore Show. It's exciting to see.
And challenging. Yeah. Now I'm going to have to start doing some more homework. We're starting the Stump the Mayor challenge.
Well, there you go. How about it? But thanks, obviously, to Lexi's Drink Farm for partnering with that segment as well. So let's real quick go over movies with the Mayor. Nightmare Before Christmas. I guess we didn't talk about it. We didn't get to film last week. Things were all up and down, but we didn't get to film last week. But Nightmare Before Christmas, still a classic.
Still a classic.
It is. It's on Disney Plus now. So you can kind of watch it whenever. And
I apologize if anybody else decided to tune in as well. It was already Thanksgiving, and this is Halloween.
It's classic.
But it is. I
will continue to be amazed that my children are not terrified by that movie.
I know.
But somehow he does it, and they love it. Mm-hmm. But even as an adult, I'm like, there's some creepy stuff going on in this movie. There's a bunch of dead people, and even the live people, even the opening scene where there's a fish market guy chopping the heads off of fish. I'm like, this is kind of dark, but my kids are like, yeah. I'm like, well, are my kids messed up for not being scared?
Cut off in Little Mermaid too.
I guess you're right. Little Mermaid has my heart. No, classic Christmas movie. It's one I did not watch as a kid. I watched with my kids, really for the first time. So no, I love it. It's another great, get in the Christmas spirit. I finally talked my kids into you weren't home, I don't think. We watched Jingle All the Way with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and that was one of my favorites. Yes,
those of you that didn't grow up with Sinbad, you missed out. But that's
great movie. Sinbad. Turbo Man, and my kids, I'm always kind of nervous. I don't know if you feel this way too. Unintentionally, I really hype up movies that I enjoyed when I was my kids' age.
I'm totally that way.
But then we actually start watching. I'm like, oh, what if they hate it? And I've set myself up for disappointment. Mm-hmm. They loved it. They loved it. It was a great movie. But we're full Christmas spirit at the Larison house right now. It's pretty great.
Good deal.
Yeah. So what are we watching? Probably another Christmas movie. I'm guessing, or no?
This is, and I know we're running long, but one of the ongoing debates, and something that I apparently already offended a handful of people on when it was asked. But I was asked if Die Hard was a Christmas movie.
It's a great debate,
and I initially said no, but I was introduced to a meme that said.
A meme.
Christmas doesn't start until you see Hans Gruber fall from Nagasaki Tower. And
so you've changed your mind.
So I've changed my mind.
Classic politician.
It's a Christmas Eve
flip-flopping.
I know it's a Christmas Eve party. And Bruce Willis, cowboy, comes in to save the day. It's not a kids movie, so if you're going to watch it, so yes, to continue to kick off the Christmas season, I suppose we should watch Die Hard.
Okay. And been doing this for a while now with you. You might not be surprised with this. I've never seen.
Then you'll
never seen Die Hard.
Do you like Bruce Willis?
Yes.
Then you'll like
Die Hard is. I've said this so many times on this show with a lot of your recommendations. Die Hard is one of those classic movies. When it came out, when it was in its prime, I was too young. I was too young to watch that movie.
Let my kids see it either.
So to me, growing up, I just never watched it. Or it's an old action movie, so I thought it was cheesy. I've never seen it start to finish.
That's the movie that set Bruce Willis as an action movie hero. He's been in Red 2, the
so many
Untouchables.
Yeah.
I think. You name it.
Love it. You got a dad joke for us?
I do. Well, in the movie, they calls him Cowboy because he's going rogue, whatever. And so, and obviously, occasionally I wear my cowboy boots. So,
do
you know what I'm doing when I try to dress in Western attire?
I don't know. Look cool.
I'm ranch dressing.
Wah, wah, wah. Hey. Hey, everybody. Thank you for watching this episode of the That was so bad. Thank you for watching this episode of the Mayor Tyler Moore Show. We love you guys. Thank you so much for watching. We've been doing this. We only got a few more episodes in 2021.
I know.
So it's really exciting. We're going to be counting down the New Year's with you guys on this show. So make sure to send in your questions for the Ask the Mayor segment. We'll see you next time.
Bye, Kokomo.